everybody, I'm with Lorry Kitka and Bobby LePire, and we are at Fantasia Fest. Hey, so I've never been. I don't know a lot about it. What's the best way to describe this festival? What is it about? I feel horror is a big part of it.
Well, may I?
Yeah.
Yes. It is about horror, but it is more specifically about genre in general. So it's like one year I saw this South African Western movie that was just incredible. I can't remember the name of it right now. But and they'll have musicals, they'll have animated, like everything that is not just like a straightforward drama is on the table. So it's a huge there's a huge well to draw from, and there's always a lot of like really interesting content or films that come out of there. It's probably my favorite like horror. It has some of my favorite horror offerings, though. I think it's probably like one in the top 3 like horror film festivals, in my opinion.
Nice. For me, I think the title, the name of the festival sums it all up. Fantasia. It's all the movies have something fantastical to them. Not necessarily fantasy, but something that makes them more than a straightforward X, be it horror, thriller, animated, or documentary. There's something else about them that gives them that extra push outside of being just those things. And I think that is really what it's about in terms of what it covers. This is my first year going virtually, sadly. I've heard of it, though, and I've been wanting to go. So I'm excited I get to do it now.
Yeah. Lori, had you gone before? We're in Montreal, I believe.
Yes. I haven't actually been in person, but I've covered this for probably like 4 years. Virtually. I really like whenever they get back to doing in IRL festivals, I want to go. So because it's pretty close to me in New York.
So what are your general impressions so far? How is it going this year?
Good. I love, and I think Bobby will agree with me, that their like virtual interface is really good. Like there's no like hiccups, there's nothing problematic, like at least insofar as what I've dealt with.
Bobby, how about just general impressions of the film selection this year?
Very strong. I have watched probably 10 to 12 movies so far, and only one of them I was like, I just can't review this. Everything else has been really interesting and weird and kind of bizarre and offbeat in all the best ways.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, let's get into it then. Let's talk about some films you've seen. Bobby, something that you've introduced to me, I should say that, is this kind of puppet horror gore. Talk about Frankenzed.
So as you just said, Alan, it is a puppet horror movie that is chock full of gore. It took Jesse Blanchard, the writer and director of the film, some 7 or 8 years to complete it. And he essentially built a studio in his backyard to make this movie. It's been crazy hearing that backstory. And the film itself is about the titular Frankenzed, and one is a Frankenstein monsters kind of creation, and the other is a zombie. And they have lived centuries at this point, and they rely on each other. Frank needs Zed to sort of strap him in and bolt him to electricity every night to recharge him for the next day. Well, Zed needs Frank to go and hunt brains for him. And this balance they have found is thrown out of whack when a murder in the woods occurs and the village people nearby blame these monsters. There's a little bit of dramatic irony at play because the audience knows that they didn't do it, and you're looking out for the real reasons behind the murders, and you're hoping Frankenzed can kind of get out unscathed, so to speak.
So, being that it's a puppet movie, does it lean more toward the sweet end of things, or is it going, because it's all practical, is it really going for the gore and the horror?
I would say it's not. There's a sweet element to it. Frank and Zed's relationship is jaw-droppingly believable and resonant, and you definitely feel for both of these characters. But the movie's not really sweet in any real way beyond that. It has an emotional core that's absolutely beautiful, but I hesitate to call it sweet. There's some comedy to be found, but I would definitely say it leans more into full-on horror, especially the last 30 minutes, maybe it's the last 20. It's a giant fight sequence between the villagers and Frankenzed, and it's insane.
Oh, I need to see this. So it's very far from the Muppets, basically.
Very, very far from the Muppets. It's much closer to
Meet the Feebles,
which we'll be covering not too far from here, or
Meet the Feebles.
Yeah, kind of Meet the Feebles, a little bit, really. But I would say this is more in line of like Puppet Monster Massacre, the one way I couldn't think of the title, which is being remade now, actually, which is going to be very interesting.
Oh, joy! I was hoping for that.
Or something like Snuff It, which is, I think the title says it all there. This is meant to be kind of a more serious vein than something like Meet the Feebles, which is intentionally jokey. Not that Meet the Feebles is great, but this is a very serious gothic horror film that's just visually speaking mind-blowing.
Oh man. And so you said that it took the director 7 to 8 years. Did you see, like, how can you see the effort of the animation? Like, are the practical effects like really, really awesome?
Yes. So that time was spent making the film, and it's all there on screen. There are some really crazy, ambitious shots throughout the film. An early shot when we're sort of getting the history and the lore of lore of what's about to happen, is this shadow just creeping along the I think it's creeping through the castle. It might be creeping through the whole village and then into the castle. And that's done practically, and it's insane to look at. And then there's a scene where Frank has to drag himself into his sort of electric chair that recharges him every night. And it kind of focuses on his one foot that he's dragging about because one leg is longer than the other. So he's pounded a brick or like a wooden block into it to balance it out, making it much heavier. And we kind of just follow that foot until he sits down, and then it just hands up. And it's so epic feeling that you forget these are puppets. You forget this is a movie. You're just there in the moment with these characters.
Very cool. So, Lori, tell us about Dreams on Fire.
Dreams
sounds like a romance of some sort.
It does, doesn't it? That is not. I mean, it is in a way, actually, because it's kind of about a. Well, it is definitely about a young woman who leaves home, which is in the Japanese countryside, to move to Tokyo to become a dancer. If you wanted to reduce this film down to the most like insulting review that you could ever give it, you could say that it is Japanese showgirls, but it is so much more than that, and there is no there's like no nudity.
So that it's not showgirls.
It's not showgirls. It's very much not. But it is. There is like a similar kind of arc in the storytelling where and there's a lot of similar films where someone goes to the big city and the big city just kind of like dumps all over them, and they're trying to make their dreams come true, and you see her getting closer and closer to the reality of becoming an actual dancer. And she starts out working in something called a hostess club, which I didn't know about, and I don't know if they have them here really, but in Japan, I guess there are these clubs where men go, and there are women that are dressed up in cute outfits, and they hang out with you at your table, and just that's it. You just drink with them, and so she starts out working there, and she kind of like takes a bunch of steps and makes a bunch of mistakes, but eventually gets to where she wants to be. And it's very realistic in the way that happens, is that it's not like an instantaneous thing, and there's a lot of grief and strife along the way. But what's cool about it is its exploration of almost every type of Japanese subculture, like whether it be like in fashion or music or art. Like there's a scene where they're in a Japanese Irish pub, for example, and there's another one where they're in like a heavy metal bar, and like it just kind of like explores the themes of Japanese nightlife, which is like famous for being crazy. And so that's what I appreciated about it, is just learning about different subcultures that exist in Japan.
So why does she kind of do the bar hopping?
Because I don't know why. That I guess she wanted to get a job, and the jobs that give you the most money are like the hostess clubs, and so the people that she works with make a lot of money because they're usually also sex workers, so they have a lot of money to just go out and drink. So she made a lot of friends that way, and then she just goes drinking with her friends because she's a young girl, a young woman.
Yeah, I just saw a movie recently about the hostess clubs, and the impression I got was that there was not a lot of sex. It wasn't they weren't necessarily sex workers, but they were more companions, escort in a real sense.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the sense you get with this one?
Yes. Well, what happens is there's just this one scene where a friend that she makes when she first starts working there is coincidentally happens to also be a sex worker, but everybody else there is just doing the hostess work. But of course it shows like men being inappropriate with them and stuff like that, because that just comes with the territory and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So in your synopsis, you mentioned Japanese subcultures and how it sort of digs its heels into that. My question is, if audience members are kind of unfamiliar with or know nothing about that sort of thing, does the movie still make sense? And does it still resonate with you as a viewer in terms of characters and emotionally and that sort of thing?
With characters and emotionally, yes, because there's a very classic character arc of someone trying to make their dreams come true, and I think that pretty much anybody can relate to that. And I think that the subculture part is just sort of the icing on the cake, and I think it's part of the, as you said, films at Fantasia have like a fantastic element, and I think that is the fantastic element to this film, and that's what makes it special, because otherwise I think it would just be kind of like it would be like the Japanese showgirls or like some ripoff of Save the Last Dance or something, but it's not that at all. And I was kind of going into it being like, please don't be that, and it wasn't, and I was so glad. And so yeah, I can't remember exactly what I gave it in my review, but I think it was an 8. But
Yeah.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
It's
and also
visually,
Showgirls has already been done to perfection, so
yeah.
no, there's
Perfection.
just no reason to try to top it. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, Bobby, you have 2 minutes to talk about your next film. You don't, but I'm just letting you know what film you're going to talk about next.
So the best film I've seen all year, be it at Fantasia Fest or anywhere else, is Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, which is this insane single shot, mind you. Everything is one take.
Oh, wow.
Japanese film where the owner of this little cafe discovers via his computer screen he can see 2 minutes into the future. So he's interacting with his past self, or the present, because that's when we're following, and his future self. And his friends and his co-workers get in on it, and they eventually discover that they can go even further into the future with other screens. I don't want to give too much away, because as describing it, I know it sounds like there's really not much to it beyond, oh, they can see into 2 minutes in the future. Who cares? An actual plot emerges, but I feel like describing it or getting too far into it really takes away from the shock and the power of what emerges throughout the film.
Okay. So this is shot in a single take. I mean, is it a true single take, or is it 1917 tricky editing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I couldn't tell if there was any tricky editing. So there might be 1 or 2 moments here or there, but not that I could tell from my initial viewing of the film. It is one take. It starts outside on the sidewalk as these shops along this block are closing. A lady's sweeping up, and then we follow up for somebody taking up the sign, going inside. We go through the doors into the cafe. The owner is getting ready for his band to play a gig later that night, so he's closing up with his coworker. He lives above his little cafe, so we go outside, up the stairs with him, into his room, back in. We're all over the place here. It is. I need to see this movie. It is amazing in terms of the sheer skill and planning that had to be implemented. Even if it's some tricky editing, it's the best editing I'll see all year then. But it's also just really impressive either way.
I want to know, like, if you can tell me why, without giving it too much away, that this movie is one of your favorites that you've seen so far this year.
One, the sheer technical skills in making this one shot. It's more than just a gimmick. It's not using this just to be, hey, look at me, I'm in one shot kind of masturbatory fodder for people without real ideas. There's a reason for it, and it works, and it helps you engage with the characters, because as they're discovering stuff, you're discovering stuff. So it keeps that immediacy there at all times. And as things ratchet up and get crazier and crazier, you feel the stakes mounting with them. I love the acting, and the characters all start off seeming like they're only going to be kind of one-dimensional based on how they react to certain things and how they react to this weird scenario they find themselves in. But they all have very interesting shades and are all very useful and fun characters. And you kind of just come to love everybody in the cast.
Yeah.
Wow.
I do need to see this movie. I saw the first single shot movie I saw was a independent film, and the only thing I kept thinking about through most of it was, can't you find locations that you could drive to faster?
Yeah.
Oh, was it the Our Pion movie?
No, this was a like independent movie.
Yeah.
So, all right, so Lorry, yeah.
Are we going there?
Yeah, we're going there.
Okay.
We're going there.
Okay.
What's your next movie? As if I didn't know.
It is a film called Sexual Drive, and it is directed by Kota Yoshida, who I am not familiar with. So in Japan, and there's a little bit of a theme of like Japan going on, isn't there? Here, that's kind of cool. So in Japan, there's different like genres of movies that they release there, and there's a type called pinkyu or pink films, which are essentially like Japanese softcore pornography. This is technically one of those, although it is not, because there is no sex in the movie at all.
Then it's not. Don't
Yeah.
don't get our hopes up.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
this is softcore porn, but there's no nudity.
I may have just like ruined the if anybody who watches this might not want to watch it now. But like it aside from that, like it is it's written I feel like Quentin Tarantino-ish kind of writing off of this. It's they call it a triptych. So there's 3 vignettes, and they're all related to like weird aphrodisiac foods, like Japanese foods that could be considered aphrodisiacs, and like and different, and there's always like a couple. And then there's this one man, and I think his character is called Kiru, and he is the link between all 3 of the stories. And these stories are just like the way that it's like Takashi Miike like level like insanity, but there's no like violence or gore or sexuality. It's all in the dialogue and like implied in the dialogue. So you feel like you can see what's happening like in your head almost. Like they create these sort of like things where you like the stories imply a lot of things, and you can kind of like let your mind go with it. And I thought that was very cool. And I gave it a 10 because I think it's like one of the most well-written films that I've seen. I mean, definitely this year, if not in a long time. I don't know if a lot of people will see it because of the subject matter, and it's very quirky. It's like it's like it's like almost comedic, but not really, and it's just creepy, and it gives you a lot of like emotions.
I like how it's like it's softcore porn, but it's not, and it's
yeah,
comedy, but it's not. Yeah, so give me an idea. Like, what's the idea of one of the stories? And
okay, that's cool. So there's the guy Kiru. Apparently, he gets this woman is driving her car, and she has a panic disorder, and it's the first time that she's driven her car by herself, and she hits him with her car, and he's like, no police, just give me a ride somewhere. And then so he gets in the car with her, and she's on her way to get this specific type of tofu, like a spicy tofu called Wapo tofu at the grocery store. And so she is like, oh shit, like I have to take this guy because he could, I hit him with my car. And then it comes to find out that they went to elementary school together, and he said that she like tortured him in elementary school and like caused his masochism that exists to this day or whatever, and tells her not to get the fake spicy tofu, to get the real spicy tofu because she's like a sadist and needs to cook the spicy tofu. So that's an example of one of the stories.
Crazy.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You mentioned when discussing it, you found the movie to be a little bit Tarantino-esque in terms of the dialogue. Can you give, if not direct quotes as examples, exactly what you mean by that? Is it just like the stylization of the dialogue?
Yeah.
Or is it how it mixes action, body humor, drama, and that sort of thing.
Well, I think that it's like its ability to because, you know, in films, there's this thing that they say typically that is show, don't tell. And Quentin Tarantino sometimes goes against that. Noah Baumbach does that, and it actually works. And like, this is the same kind of thing. It's like the language is very visual and, you know, takes you on a, like, almost a separate journey than what you're seeing on screen. So it's like you're experiencing two different you know, sensations at once, which is what, like, I feel like when I watch a Quentin Tarantino movie. I feel that that's like very similar in as how the dialogue works in this film.
Yeah, I mean, there's no rule that says you can't tell.
Yeah,
but you've got to be skillful and artful at it. If you're gonna break a rule, so to speak, you've got to know what you're doing, and it sounds like
exactly.
All right, Bobby. Let's see. What's another film you saw?
I saw a documentary called Satoshi Kon, The Illusionist, directed by Pascal Alex Vincent, and it's exactly what the title sounds like. It is a documentary about the greatest filmmaker of all time, Satoshi Kon. For those unfamiliar with his work, he was director of anime, and he did Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers, and Paprika, and the show Paranoia Agent. And every single one of those things is spectacular and amazing, with the Millennium Actress being my absolute favorite animated film of all time, and my second favorite movie, just period, live action or animated of all time. And the movie interviews a whole bunch of colleagues and other filmmakers, people inspired by him, goes into what inspired him. And it's just a wonderful tribute to a man who died way, way too young, just as he was getting his due in the world of film.
This is another Japanese director, isn't it? This I think that there's like.
Yeah, Satoshi Kon is Japanese. The movie itself was directed by, I believe, Pascal Alex Vincent is French.
Yeah,
I could be mistaken on that, but I believe he is.
Could be Quebecois. From Quebec.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I mean, I think you gave it a 10.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a perfect movie. So what is it about his story or the film itself? Is it the stories and the, you know, his story, or is it the creative process? What is it that really stood out to you to get that 10?
The documentary, Satoshi Kon, The Illusionist, is edited like one of Kon's films. That's what stood out to me. The fact that they were able to, I don't know if mimic's the right word, because that sounds insincere, but replicate that to such a degree in order to tell this man's life story and take a very long look at his legacy and his work. And it's not just a highlight reel. It looks at the problems he had trying to get this made. And maybe he had issues here or there or whatever, because it is a warts and all kind of a look at it, his life and his work. But it's edited like one, so it's everything just kind of flows together, and it feels almost dreamlike at times. Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting because the style of the movie, in terms of how it's presented, is essentially just a talking heads, utilizing archival footage and photos from when Kon was alive. His story is interesting enough where that extra style that the filmmaker brings really just shows how much he loves and cares and respects about Kon's work, as opposed to it being feeling like just a ripoff or anything like that.
So the problems he had making films, is it financing by nature, or is it technological? If you
some of it is like funding, trying to get funding for certain projects just never really took off the way he was hoping. We should point out he also was a writer. He illustrated and wrote several manga and stuff as well. And he was doing that kind of in between movies, but he really was trying to get certain passion projects off the ground, and funding just kept falling through for some reason. So it's things like that, really more on like the back end side, if that makes sense.
The common problem all filmmakers have.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, like, was there any of the talking heads? Was there anybody particularly impressive in there?
Oh yes, they got a lot of impressive people. Some of them, if you're not as familiar with pop culture in Japan, might not mean that much to you. But they do have Darren Aronofsky is heavily featured throughout the film. He and Kon became good friends. Mark Caro, is that his last name? Mark Caro, the co-director of several really visually intense films, like City of Lost Children, for example. Heavily featured throughout. Some voice actors like Megumi Hayashibara. Don't speak Japanese, don't hate me. Is in it. The director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is interviewed. And of course, the not the Godfather of anime, because Tezuka's been dead for a while, but the Godfather of modern adult-oriented manga and anime, Miyamori Oshii, is throughout the film as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and Jerry Lewis, I think. Okay.
Yes, it was a surprise screening of the day the clown cried.
He was. Yeah, they loved him in Japan. All right. Lori, tell us about another movie you saw.
Okay, so this one is it's called Giving Birth to a Butterfly, and it's directed by Theodore Schaefer. This is his feature debut, I believe. And essentially, it is just about a woman who gets her identity stolen, and she goes to the place, or to the address that is connected to where her identity was stolen from. Sounds pretty like, okay, whatever, right? Except it is definitely not. So this, I don't know how, but they somehow made this into like, it's very Lynchian, and it's like a commentary on like suburban malaise and stuff, and but it's very simple, but it's also like there's a lot of the way that it's shot and the way that it's edited. There's a lot of dread and foreboding and like horror to this situation that seems very banal, and it's like, I found that just like really impressive that they were able to do that. And but it is like, I could say I really liked it, but I definitely think that there's like a super heavy David Lynch influence on the film, and that's why I like it. So, go for it as far as I'm concerned. Like but the coolest part to me also is that I really liked the show Friends from College. I don't know if you guys watch that on Netflix or not, but there's a girl, her name is Annie Parise, who was in that show, and she is the star of this film. And it's very like I guess when you're used to seeing someone in like a comedic role and then they're in this very like strange like stylistic drama or like stylized like weird drama, it's like really kind of jarring thing. And yeah, the whole film is just kind of like jarring. It's definitely like watching a David Lynch movie. You're just like, what? There's more than one set of twins, for example. There's a lot of weird metaphysical stuff going on. It's very strange.
And where was this filmed?
It's an American movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was Japan.
Yeah, no, like if it was, I would scream, but no, it's an American.
It's so much better.
No, but it's an American film. But yeah, no, and it feels it's like very American. But it also kind of reminds me of Donnie Darko, I would say. It's like a David Lynch, Donnie Darko melange.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like that the movie, it takes a low stakes idea and brings a lot of high stakes to it.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And I should comment that there's also like there are other characters besides her and they go into like deep characterization of like her husband, for example, who he thinks that he's a big time chef, but he actually is like the counter guy at a diner, but he's like talking about how he's going to start his restaurant and all this stuff. And he's very critical of her. And she like has to deal with that, and they have kids that are about to leave the house, and it has like a lot of very relatable kind of mundane stuff going on that, well, not super mundane, but like stuff that is relatable, but there's like very ominous tones and weird Lynchian stuff thrown in there, especially towards the end.
So you mentioned two sets of twins, or at least more than one set of twins earlier. Without spoiling, if possible, I want to know what makes the twins so creepy.
Oh,
do they read each other's minds? Are they emotionally empathetic?
Yes, kind of, yes. And they're like these two, the main set of twins, rather, these two they're women in like their 80s, and they talk like the log lady in Twin Peaks. Like they say stuff that makes absolutely no sense. And another thing that I forgot to mention that makes this interesting is that Annie Cerise's character is accompanied by her son's girlfriend, who's pregnant with a baby that's not his, but he's deciding to be the father. So they're like on a road trip together, and it's like that's very awkward too. Like just them being together on the road trip. And yeah.
All right, well, thanks. Appreciate Bobby. Appreciate Lorry for being here. Yeah, this is one of those festivals where I'm like, I want to see these movies, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to see it. I got to see that Frankenzed.
We should do another one, because there's so many other like crazy cool movies that both of us have yet to watch.
Okay, yeah, we could definitely do another one of these.
Yeah.
So hey everybody, so this is our Fantasia Fest recap so far. Maybe we'll do another one, we don't know. But be sure to like, subscribe, comment below, tell us what you thought of these movies or how much you want to see these movies. And with that, let's get out of here.